Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves set the definitive standard for on-screen romantic chemistry. Yet one legendary moment saw their unspoken tension finally break through. The 1994 film Speed redefined action movies with a brilliantly simple and terrifying concept. A city bus wired to detonate if its speed ever fell below 50 miles per hour. This created an atmosphere of high stakes, pure adrenaline, and absolute chaos. But according to those watching closely, the real explosion was happening off-screen between the two leads. This behind-the-scenes look focuses on that specific instance when Keanu Reeves proved too charming, causing Sandra Bullock to completely lose her composure. The question remains whether it was a scripted slip or a famous mutual crush finally taking over. Examining this scene proves some sparks are simply too intense to handle, revealing the heartwarming truth about Sandra and Keanu's connection. Before discussing that legendary moment, it is worth examining the roles that made Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock the ultimate cinematic pair. In the 1994 classic Speed, Reeves portrays Jack Traven, a fearless LAPD officer racing against time. His mission is to stop a city bus from exploding, but this is no ordinary bomb. The device was rigged by a vengeful extortionist named Howard Payne, played with terrifying brilliance by Dennis Hopper. The rules are simple but deadly. Dropping below 50 miles per hour means detonation. Amid this high-stakes chaos, audiences meet Sandra Bullock as Annie Porter, a passenger forced to take the wheel and drive for her life. This heart-pounding premise came from a lucky misunderstanding. Screenwriter Graham Yost was inspired by the 1985 film Runaway Train after his father mistakenly told him a bomb was on board that train. That single error sparked the idea for Speed. Yost first considered keeping the bus above 20 miles per hour, but a friend suggested pushing it to 50 to maximize adrenaline. The suggestion worked flawlessly. When a movie hit theaters in June 1994, it became a global phenomenon, earning $350 million and snagging 2 Academy Awards. It was a huge victory for 20th Century Fox, but the real win was the electric chemistry between the two leads. Interestingly, the iconic duo audiences adore almost looked very different. Sandra Bullock was not the first choice to play Annie. The role was originally written for a no-nonsense African-American paramedic and was first offered to Halle Berry. Halle turned it down because she felt the dialogue was not quite right and joked that she simply did not want to drive a bus. Looking back, she admitted the movie gods might have been off that day because once Sandra stepped in, magic occurred. Sandra had been working since 1987, but Speed was the rocket ship that launched her to international superstardom. The film was so successful that a sequel, Speed 2 Cruise Control, was rushed out a few years later. However, without Keanu Reeves returning, the sequel famously failed and was crushed by critics. This failure proved one thing: you can have the same high-stakes action, but you cannot manufacture the spark Keanu and Sandra shared. Their connection was the secret ingredient that made Speed a masterpiece. They were not just two actors playing parts. They were a lightning bolt captured on film. That very connection leads to the specific scene where the professional masks finally fell off, and a simple scripted moment turned into something far more real. To understand Sandra Bullock's journey, consider her early life. Born in 1964 in Arlington, Virginia, she grew up with a vibrant mix of cultures, thanks to her German opera singer mother, Helga, and her American Army employee father, John. This upbringing took her across the ocean, where she spent 12 years living in Nuremberg, Vienna, and Salzburg. Sandra was immersed in the arts, studying ballet and singing in children's choirs, while her mother toured European opera houses. This international childhood gave her grit and versatility that would later define her acting career. Even a childhood fall into a creek, which left a permanent scar above her left eye, seemed to foreshadow the tough, relatable characters she would eventually play. By high school back in Virginia, she was already a standout, serving as a cheerleader and lighting up the school theater stage. She followed that passion to East Carolina University, earning a drama degree in 1987. But stardom did not come easily. Like many legends, Sandra moved to Manhattan and paid her dues, working as a bartender and coat checker while grinding through auditions. Her hustle paid off when her performance in an off-Broadway play caught the right attention. She made her big-screen debut in the 1987 film Hangman, leading to more roles in TV movies and a short-lived series called Working Girl. Each step was a building block, preparing her for the moment she would step onto that rigged city bus and change action cinema forever. She was not an overnight success, but a trained performer who had lived 1,000 lives before the world knew her name. The magic of Speed almost did not happen as remembered. Early script versions had the bomb set for 20 miles per hour, with the bus circling Dodger Stadium before exploding at the Hollywood sign. Jeff Daniels' character, Harry, was originally the secret villain, but the production team realized audiences would never believe that, leading to the creation of Dennis Hopper's character. Joss Whedon was brought in as an uncredited script doctor, writing nearly 99% of the dialogue and turning Alan Ruck's character from a mean lawyer into a lovable, confused tourist. Casting was another wild ride. Before Keanu Reeves, A-listers like Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks, and Wesley Snipes were approached. Director Jan de Bont chose Keanu after Point Break, wanting to transform him from a surfer boy image into a serious action star. The role of Annie was offered to Meryl Streep, Glenn Close, and Halle Berry before Sandra claimed it. A real-life tragedy struck on Halloween 1993 when Keanu's best friend, River Phoenix, passed away. Devastated, Keanu was in the middle of demanding sequences. De Bont reshuffled the schedule, allowing Keanu to work on quieter scenes while he processed his loss. During breaks, Keanu retreated to his trailer to read Hamlet, finding space to cope with his sadness. Despite the heavy heart he carried, his performance remained focused and powerful. The stunts were a masterclass in practical filmmaking. The famous bus jump over a freeway gap came from de Bont seeing an unfinished section of the I-105. On the first attempt, the stunt driver missed the ramp and crashed. On the second try, the bus soared 109 feet through the air, landing on expensive cameras. Digital effects erased pavement beneath the bus, and birds were added to make the space feel hollow. Filming on that unfinished highway meant the crew painted lines and put up signs themselves. Actors often performed their own transitions between the bus and rescue vehicles, earning extra pay for stunt work. Test screening audiences were so hooked that they refused to look away, with some walking backward toward exits to avoid missing a single frame. The production ran out of money before the final subway crash was filmed, but positive reactions to animated storyboards convinced the studio to fund the scene properly. The subway train was actually a bus decorated to look like a train. These creative solutions made the $30 million budget feel like $100 million. Speed became the fifth highest-grossing film of 1994, and Quentin Tarantino later named it a favorite, noting the pure exhilaration it provides. The film used 14 different buses, each modified for specific purposes like high speeds or tilted turns. But all the buses and explosions were just a backdrop for the real highlight, the connection between Keanu and Sandra. The genuine bond between the two actors became legendary. During her 1994 audition, Sandra recalled doing physical scenes that involved rolling on the floor with Keanu to test their chemistry. At one point, Keanu accidentally grabbed her butt and panicked, while Sandra laughed it off. Keanu described Sandra as having a wonderful energy that made everywhere she went feel like springtime. They kept in touch through letters, with Sandra checking on him after his motorcycle accidents. They had dinner dates over the years, maintaining a familiar yet exciting connection. In 2006, they reunited for the lake house, and their undeniable spark remained. Keanu praised her as funny as heck and smart as a whip, while Sandra admitted intimate scenes with him were still scary and exhilarating. When Sandra received an award, Keanu's speech moved her to tears, telling her that her soul and talent were extraordinary and finishing with, "You are definitely hot." In 2018, Sandra confessed on television that she had a massive crush on Keanu while filming Speed, finding it incredibly hard to be serious because he was too sweet and too handsome. She lived for years believing the feeling was not mutual. But months later, Keanu revealed on the same show that he had a crush on her too. Neither knew they were both pining for each other, creating one of cinema's greatest missed connections. In another charming story, Sandra mentioned never trying champagne and truffles, and Keanu showed up at her door days later with both, simply dropping them off and leaving. When asked why they never dated, Sandra explained she feared ruining their incredible friendship. Even now, they still look for ways to work together again. Sandra jokes about doing a comedy where they play two old people in an RV driving slowly, calling it the bookend to Speed. This brings the focus back to that one legendary moment on the bus where the professional mask finally slipped. Sandra Bullock could not keep her composure because the man across from her was not merely a co-star, but the crush she thought she would never have. The tension was real, proving that sometimes the best explosions happen when the cameras are not even looking for them.